Hi, welcome to Making Sense of Movies. I'm Claire.
I'm Alaina.
And today we are talking about A24 movies, which is near and dear to both of our hearts. It's an independent American film company, fairly new, founded in 2012. But besides the movie community, I feel like not many people have heard of this company, at least the people I've talked to.
I feel like people I know the movies they make. I don't know if they necessarily know it's A24.
Mm-hmm.
They're fairly popular now. A lot of their films get a ton of, not all their films, but specific films of theirs tend to get buzz. They've had a lot of Oscar nominations in the last couple of years. So we're going to talk about our top 5 A24 films.
Mm-hmm. And it's very, A24, the cool thing about it is they're so broad. There's some which are just, balls to the wall crazy, and others that reach a more general audience, which we've got really both of those on this list.
Okay, so we're going to start with the most recent A24 film that we saw. So we saw The Lighthouse, which is directed by Robert
Eggers, who is just coming off of The Witch.
Yes, so I have not seen The Witch. Claire, have you?
I really like The Witch.
Yeah,
The only thing about it is the we're not talking about The Witch. But I just want to say I love that movie, but I had to watch it with subtitles because of just the very thick accents, and I kind of feel like it's the same for The Lighthouse.
That's what I was going to say.
I would love to watch it again just with subtitles because you can just tell there's a lot of really good and just very interesting writing, but some of it's just so glossed over because it's I just can't understand what
there were definitely scenes where I was like, I feel like I just heard noises. Mm-hmm. I did not understand at all what they're saying. By the end, you understand, but I do wish it had subtitles.
Yeah.
So if you don't know what The Lighthouse is about, it's about two lighthouse keepers, I guess. One old, played by Willem Dafoe. And then the younger one is played by Robert Pattinson. And basically, they're supposed to stay, I think, for 4 weeks or something. And then a storm hits, and they stay there for much longer. And throughout this period of time, and throughout the movie, things get weird and things get crazy.
They're driven into madness, both by the space they're in and by each other.
So before we start, this film is entirely in black and white. I feel like, was The Witch in black and white?
No, it wasn't.
Oh, I don't know why. I feel like I watched the trailer and I thought it was. So it's entirely in black and white. Claire and I are taking a history of photography class, and we thought it very much reminiscent of a daguerreotype, which is the first type of photography. And I did do some reading. They did use some very old film lenses. So it does have this very kind of old black and white film feel to it.
And I think it, having it be in black and white, I think was a great decision because it just makes everything so bleak. And it makes you really focus. And, the visuals in this, don't get me wrong, the visuals are amazing, but I feel like having it in black and white makes you focus on, the characters and the situation a little bit more.
Also, the fact that it wasn't widescreen like it would be in a normal movie theater. It was cut. I don't know how to... I guess it was square. I don't really know how to...
Oh, yeah. It was just different formatting.
Different formatting. Yeah. So it didn't take up the entire movie screen like most movies nowadays do. It took up... It was basically just the middle of the screen. There were no ends. And that also... It definitely helped the, isolated feel that these two characters were having, which I thought really added to the story.
Yeah, made it a lot more claustrophobic.
Definitely. Did we like this movie, Claire?
I have to watch it. I do think I like this movie. I would have to watch it again. I love how it is just crazy. So much stuff's happening, and it almost to a point where it makes you feel like you're there and you're trying to figure out with them, what is going on. I'm so confused. So I think that was good. But then on the other hand, I would like to see this movie if it was a little bit more structured.
I agree.
I think that would be interesting.
There isn't much that truly happens in the film, in the sense they're on the island, they do work, they're isolated on this lighthouse, which I've heard in many interviews, and if you don't know this already, is basically just a big phallic symbol, the lighthouse itself. There are two men. There's definitely a sense of this undertone of masculinity and how men present themselves in this film, which we can talk about a little later. But in the beginning, and maybe the first 30 minutes or so, they're just doing normal things. The way when I saw the trailer, I'm okay, it's gonna get weird. And I remember watching it and being when is it gonna get weird? And then it got too weird, and I was oh, maybe I want to go back.
Oh, I kind of like how, though, I think the point of that was in the beginning, it's just so repetitive, and you just feel yourself doing the same things over and over and over again, which I liked.
And
I liked it.
Spoiler alert, it basically all happens because Robert Pattinson kills a seal.
A great scene.
It's a lot. There's a lot of weird things in this film. There's like Robert Pattinson having sex with a mermaid, the only female character to come in the film at all, and she's basically just a mermaid he has sex with.
Which actually, I thought that scene was going to be more intense.
Oh yeah, I thought the mermaids had a much bigger role in this film.
Yeah.
I feel like they advertised it like they had a much bigger role, and it did not.
And I read...
Spoiler alert, there's like maybe a couple minutes of mermaids in that scene.
Yeah, and I had read so many... See, I don't really read that many articles beforehand, but I was trying to convince someone to go see the movie, and I was using the mermaid sex as my main point for it. And all the articles I was reading was just like, oh, so intense. Like, it's going to be this crazy sex scene.
It was not.
It was more tame than it was.
I thought they advertised it to be. So, I guess we'll just go through, like, the flow of the film. So once... This movie's hard to talk about because, like, so much weird things happen. Like, there's a general scene where things start to get weirder. So once they realize they can't leave the island, no one's coming for them. Robert Pattinson throughout the whole film doesn't drink at all. Once he starts drinking and Willem Dafoe, though, is drinking the whole time, they both start drinking together, is when, like, shit hits the fan. They're, like, drunkenly dancing together. There's a great scene where Robert Pattinson is like, I don't like your cooking. And Willem Dafoe is like, you like my cooking. And he's like, I don't. And they're fighting back and forth, and it's such, like, a weirdly, like, domestic, like, fight between them. That I was like, they're basically like an old married couple, where he's like, you have to like my cooking. Like, I've seen you eat my cooking. Robert Pattinson has a great line about steak. That was pretty funny.
That's a funny scene. There's
definitely lightheartedness in this film, where I definitely did not, like, think. Yeah, and then after he's like, I don't like your cooking, Willem Dafoe, like, curses him with, like, Poseidon or something like that. And then more, like, weird things happen. Like, there's a point where Willem Dafoe becomes the lighthouse.
That's the scene for me I was going to bring up that I was like, this is freaky.
That was a weird part.
Freaky.
So was this after the furious masturbation scene?
I could not tell you when this scene was, but basically what happens is I think they're on the top of are they on the top of the lighthouse at this point? I don't know.
I can't tell you. I have to think this movie does a very good job of making you kind of feel insane. There were points where I was like, even watching the film, where I was like, where am I within this film? Like, what just happened? Like, I don't even remember what just happened.
Yeah.
And I have to, that was like kind of, it was weird coming out of the film and being like, what did I just watch? Because I truly do not remember anything.
Yeah. Oh, but so in this scene, Robert Pattinson goes up to this guy and grabs his shoulder. And the guy turns around, and it's also Robert Pattinson. Yeah. And then standing behind him is Willem Dafoe.
Completely stark naked, might I add.
Naked. And I forget if the light was either coming out of his mouth or his eyes. But
was it a third eye?
It might have been a third eye, but it's just such a... that scene has just stuck with me. Like, I was so creeped out by that. I was like, it's just so...
Yeah.
Very frightening. Very frightening.
I don't know if it's that frightening. I was just like, wait, what's going on? I remember, like, gasping and being like, what the hell?
I just wasn't expecting that.
It was a lot.
And then there's the whole scene with, so Robert Pattinson's character, he had another occupation, and he was working for some, like, lumber company.
Yeah, lumber.
And I guess what happened was he had watched one of his workers fall into the water, or his coworkers fall into the water, and, like, logs came over him, and he did nothing to help.
Yeah, so the coworker dies.
And then, so Robert Pattinson's sort of haunted by the thought that...
Yeah.
And there's this back and forth of, like, did he actually kill this guy?
Or is he just... But he changes his name and he runs away.
He takes
like,
the other
that's,
guy's
like,
name.
something that comes out in the film, where Robert Pattinson, who in the film, I think, what's his name?
Thomas.
No. His first name.
Oh.
Something with a W.
Wilfred?
Not Wilfred.
Hold on, let me
look it up.
Yeah.
But he has this other name, and then drunk one night, Willem Dafoe's like, I don't want to hear about your dirt. Winslow. Okay, so his initial name is Winslow, his last name. That's what Willem Dafoe calls him. And then Robert Pattinson is all like, I have something to tell you. Willem Dafoe's like, I don't want to hear this. And then Robert tells him. And yeah, we all regretted that moment because it didn't really, like, it's his own guilt his own, like, you realize why he does so well, why he doesn't drink. The whole point he doesn't drink is because in the manual it says lighthouse keepers are not allowed to drink, and Willem Dafoe is basically like, I don't care, like, I've been doing this for a while, like, you're so new. And they have that, like, old and young dynamic. There's also definitely some, like, homosexual undertones in this film. Mm-hmm. There's a scene where they're, like, dancing, like, pretty wildly, and then they're, like, slow dancing very close. Mm-hmm. And then they're about to kiss, and then they start fighting again. And I'm like, you could have done the kiss. But decided not to.
I'm trying to think what else about this movie I like.
So much else.
I was just, like, so hooked from the very beginning. Just, like, with... Everything was so loud in the very beginning. Like, with the boat
there's
coming
the siren.
in and the sirens, which I thought was great. I loved the sound of the siren. And then there's just one shot in the beginning, and it's just both of them staring into the camera. And you're just kind of like, oh, man, like, get ready, because you're going for a trip. Like, this is going to be, like,
I do admit to being kind of bored at certain points. Because, like, the first 30 minutes, it's the repetitiveness of, like, their days. Like, Robert Pattinson is, like, getting lobster. And also a whole issue in the movie is that Willem Dafoe is the only one allowed on the, like, the night lighthouse. Like, he's not, like, he's the only one who's allowed in the lighthouse. Robert Pattinson does all the other work, which, like, includes cleaning and stuff like that. He's basically, like, a wife. And, like, I was, like, waiting. I'm like, okay, he's gonna go see what's in the lighthouse. And then it doesn't happen until the way end of the film. And even then, like, you don't really know what he sees or if it's just light. Because there's a scene where Willem Dafoe is transfixed by this light. And he kind of looks like he's very much, maybe, like, not knocked out, but, I don't know how to say it. Like, transfixed, but...
Yeah, I think transfixed is
a good word? Okay. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, what's going to happen when Robert Pattinson sees it? And that's, like, kind of the end of the film is where he sees it.
Yeah. What do you think the light means?
I heard somewhere that it's God. I really don't think it's God. I don't know. I think it's just, like, obsession.
Obsession?
Because there's, like, an incident before in the film where Willem Dafoe, like, Robert Pattinson's like, oh, what happened to your other, like, lighthouse keeper? And Willem Dafoe's like, oh, he went insane, so...
I did read some things about that, where it was almost as if William Dafoe's character was trying to make him go insane by planting the seeds of, like, other person went insane.
I definitely think Willem Dafoe was trying to make Robert Pattinson go insane. There's a point in the book where... Not in the book, in the film, where Robert Pattinson, he's like, I've had enough. Like, I cannot do this. And they have this, like, little boat, not like a ship, and he tries to go away, and Willem Dafoe has this axe, and he's running around in this axe, and he chops up the boat, and then Rob Pattinson runs into the house, and Willem Dafoe follows him with the axe. And as soon as he comes in, Willem Dafoe is like, oh, look, you're crazy. You're following me around with an axe. Mm-hmm. And I was like, that's not what we just saw.
Yeah.
But yet that is what's taken as fact in the film, which is why I, like, definitely believe he's trying to make him go crazy.
And just trying to keep him on the island so he doesn't have to be alone there.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. Mm-hmm. In addition, there's where... Willem Dafoe the whole time is recording what's happening in this book that he locks away. Robert Pattinson finally finds the book, and he's like, and in the book, basically, Willem Dafoe is saying, oh, Robert Pattinson is drunk all the time. He's not doing his work right. And Robert Pattinson's like, what the hell? No, like, the whole film, you see him working very hard. And then you have this written fact, like, oh, he's really not working this hard. So it makes you question what's really happening. Because what we saw is, no, he's working really hard. And he gets really offended. He's like, no, I'm a hard worker. And that kind of, like, pushes him off the edge.
Yeah, and that was so sad because I was just like, damn, you're going to throw Robert Pattinson under the bus like that?
He really did. He was doing a good job.
He was doing a very good job.
He got blown in the face with shit.
Yeah.
Remember that?
I do remember that.
That was a weird scene.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an out of context scene I feel like we should be referencing, but maybe aren't. Any, like, last things? They do both die at the end. I feel like that is something I was expecting. I did like the last shot of Robert Pattinson. His last shot is he's naked on the beach, and there are, like, seagulls poking his eyes out, which is what Willem Dafoe said would happen if you killed a seagull. So clearly, like, the seagull thing is running through, but it reminded me very much of a painting.
Oh, really? Which painting?
I don't know. I remember seeing it, and I, like, had this, like, initial like, recognition of, oh, I've seen something like this before.
Yeah, there's this one story, this one, like, Greek mythology story. I forget who it is, but it's this one human, I think, or maybe demigod, steals fire from another god, and then as punishment, an eagle eats out his liver for the rest of eternity, which a lot of people were making parallels to after Robert Pattinson saw the light and then was like, had his stomach and like the rest of his body eaten out by the gulls.
Yeah, the gull. Do not underestimate the gulls. No. The one with the one eye.
Yeah.
Those seagulls were sick. Very well trained.
They were creepy.
And but they were also truly best actor nominees.
Some of the best comedic moments in that was with the seagull, because the seagull would like come up to the window and was just being like such a little jerk.
Yeah.
And it was just...
Performances very well done for both of them.
Yeah. Could you see them getting nominated for Oscars for this?
I don't know about Robert Pattinson, because I think Robert Pattinson's going for, at least they're advertising him as the lead actor, while Willem Dafoe is the supporting. I feel like Willem Dafoe probably supporting. I don't know about Robert Pattinson. But we have another RPATS film to review.
That's very true.
So maybe he deserved it for that one.
And I think that... Robert Pattinson, he really, because Willem Dafoe has been nominated at least one other time.
He was nominated, last time he was nominated was last year for
Florida Project, and then was he nominated for Loving Vincent was nominated.
It's the Vincent Van Gogh, it's like Eternal something. He played Vincent Van Gogh, I did not see that film.
No, neither did I. But like, he's just a top-notch grade A actor, and Robert Pattinson, who a lot of people underestimate him due to his
Twilight, which we talked about last episode.
Of course, yeah. But he definitely is here, standing right up to William Dafoe's performance.
Yeah, definitely.
Props to both of them, for sure.
Yeah, and I think that's a good place to end it. And our next film
is 8th Grade.
8th Grade, which is, we're going in like least chronological order, so from newest to oldest.
Yeah, so 8th Grade
is written and directed by Bo Burnham, which...
Bo Burnham's great.
I
love Bo Burnham. And he was just perfect.
He's a comedian, if you don't know. He has 2 specials out. I think they're still on Netflix. What and Make Happy. Those are both of his Netflix specials. He's really funny. He does a lot of like theatrics in his Netflix comedy. And I remember when I first heard about this, I was like very confused, just because I was like, oh, like Bo Burnham, like directing this about 8th grade. Like I thought it's a comedy. I let you know that, but it's not like his comedy. It's very different than anything he's used to. So the 8th Grade follows our protagonist, Kayla, played by Elsie Fisher, great actress, who basically it's basically through her last week of 8th grade and kind of like beginning of high school, and how she's very, very shy. She low-key reminded me of me. My favorite thing was, so the first scene, she's all like, she has a YouTube page, or channel, oh my god. She has a YouTube channel, and she basically talks about how you need confidence or how to get friends, yet she in her own life doesn't have any of these things, which I found very kind of ironic, because there's this need to, be famous or to like TikToks and shit like that. And yet, these kids put on these great personas, yet was her persona so great? Not really, but she doesn't have these things in her life. Like, she doesn't really have any friends in the beginning of the film.
She's almost using the YouTube video to like wish it into existence.
Yes, yeah.
And the thing I like about it is there's a lot of, 8th grade, it's totally stands on its own, but there's a lot of movies that kind of follow a similar format where it's about, like, the shy, sort of outcast person, like, young girl or guy. The thing I like about it is usually in those movies, there's, like, a friend, like 2 outcasts, and she is just totally on her own, and it just makes you feel for her so much.
Also, like, her dad, she lives with her dad, her mother is never seen in the film. I think we assume
divorce.
Yeah,
they do say it's divorce.
She's divorced, but we assume like she doesn't have a relationship with the mother as of this point. She lives with the dad. One of my favorite things I wanted to point out is in the beginning, she talks about how she's like, oh, like the first scene where she's like, oh, I don't have a lot of like views, so please like and subscribe, and that's low-key us in our podcast. Our like super awkward first podcast.
Way to plug our podcast in the middle of our podcast. So just slide into your
just please
DM.
Follow us. Okay, just a lovely plug.
I like it.
Can we also mention how when she's doing her makeup, there's I think, is it Olivia Jones who did the college admission scandal?
Is she in it?
She's the YouTube video she's doing her makeup in.
Oh my gosh.
I literally wrote in my notes, RIP.
That's so funny. I didn't even notice that.
Oh, it was so funny. I started laughing. And that's not Bo Burnham's fault. That's just like life. Just college admission scandal. So we'll get into the film. You want to talk about?
Oh yeah. So I love the writing in this. Like, I was appalled. I do not think it was nominated for writing.
I was so
I think
angry
it should have been, just because it's so. It hits like 8th graders now, like, it's just...
It really it is how people talk.
Yeah.
And I watched an interview where he was saying how he just watched a lot of these YouTube channels, these 8th graders, like, who have, like, maybe 10 views, and how they talk. In the first video, it's a lot of it's a lot of likes. She doesn't really choose her words very carefully.
But it's just very true to the age group.
This is not like these teen movies where it's like 50-year-old men writing. Like, you can tell it was written by someone who not only understands but wants to put out something that's like believable. And that was something I like watching it. You don't realize you're watching the film. You feel like you're just watching like life.
Yeah, like the writing is unbelievable. Like, and same with like her bedroom. I felt the same way because there's some bedrooms
they're so tricked out. And you're like,
and it's like,
who is letting you do this?
Yeah. I just felt like it was just all so relatable. I think that's the word I'm looking for. It's relatable. Whether you're in 8th grade
or not,
or afterwards, you can look back on it and be like, oh gosh, like I felt that same way sometimes.
No, there was I also love how I don't know if Bob did this or I don't know who did the music editing. There's great scenes where when Kayla is, let's say, looking at her crush Aiden, there's that music that plays.
Yeah, I wrote that down too. I wrote that down.
I watched this not with Claire for the first time, with 2 of my friends, and we legitimately started laughing when this came on. It was so funny because that's how you feel when you look at your crush and all of a sudden like he's passing by or something. And that music that happens twice, and then there's a great scene where she's going into the pool party and there's this really intense music going on, and I loved it because like that's how she feels. Yeah. That like this is a really big event. Yet when she finally opens the door, like it's not that big a deal. Like she's at a pool party. Yeah. Yet to her it's everything.
Yeah, no, that's what I wrote down because the music is so cool in this, and in the beginning it's so operatic, which just fits the whole thing, I think, because we're all worrying about fitting in, and she is too. And especially in 8th grade and middle school, you're like micro-analyzing all the things you do. Yeah. So this operatic music, even though it's like a small event, everything you do in 8th grade, you feel like
magnified 1,000%.
You feel like it's a big event and that everyone's watching you. When like looking back, no one really is. Like,
yeah, there are points where so before the pool party, she's like freaking out in the bathroom, and like I've done that at like 1,000 bar mitzvahs that I've been to because I just didn't want to be there. I didn't want to like talk to people I don't usually talk to, so I would go in the bathroom, freak out, and then just like go back outside. Low-key fun story. I once I told my mom I was sick, and I wasn't sick because I was so nervous. I didn't want to go to this guy's bar mitzvah. Aww. Yeah, but it was great. I like read in bed and didn't have to do anything.
Oh, and I love the dad in this. The dad is such...
He tries so hard. Yeah. Oh my god, he's just like trying to be a good dad. And you can tell like he really like doesn't quite understand. And she's also mean to him too. Like she is feeling a certain way, and she kind of uses her feelings when she's mad at herself to her dad, which is like something very relatable. I feel like a lot of people do that.
And just the one scene that got to me was when she's at the kitchen table and the dad's just trying to talk to her, and she has the phone and she's just going on the phone and not talking to him.
Yeah. I thought that was sad. I'm like, he's just trying to connect with you.
Yeah. But overall, I love Kayla's character so much.
Kayla's great.
Because just from the beginning, you just really like her, and you're really rooting for her. And rewatching this, there's a few scenes in this where you can tell she's just so uncomfortable. Like
she hunches a lot in the film.
Yeah.
I think she's like normal height or in such or taller. But yeah, she hunches a lot. I noticed that her face is always kind of like very like please like. She wants to talk to people, yet she's so scared. She's like, please don't talk to me. Yeah. I would like burst in 1,000 flames. There's that scene with when she goes to the high school, and there's that really creepy guy.
Yeah, when they're at the mall in the car.
Yeah, when they're in the car. Yeah. So there's a scene where after 8th grade, they do like this high school buddy program, and she gets paired with this girl, and they end up hanging out outside of like class, and she hangs out with them. The dad's kind of like watching them, which I thought was pretty funny. So he leaves, and she gets a ride back with this high school boy. And once they drop off the friend, he like kind of gets kind of creepy.
Yeah, he gets into the back seat and they start playing Truth or Dare.
And he's like...
And he keeps on choosing Dare, and she keeps on choosing Truth. And she's like, I don't know, like, what you want to do for your Dare? And he's like, oh, I'll take my shirt off. Would that be weird? And then he's like, oh, like, you take your shirt off. And she's saying, like, oh...
No, I don't want to do that.
That makes me uncomfortable. I don't want that. And then he kind of scolds her for it, and...
Yeah, he gets upset.
And then she's the one apologizing to him, which I hated to see. This whole scene,
that was sad.
Like, when I watched this the first time in theaters, not just this scene, like the whole movie, throughout the whole movie, everyone was laughing, thought it was like, there was funny parts of the movie. When we got to this scene, the theater was dead silence. Like, it was a well done scene. It just was all so creepy, and you just felt for it.
Yeah, you knew there was some, because he was also very quiet.
Yeah.
And they had this like little moment in the cafeteria where he's like, I'm not quiet, you're quiet.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I'm glad she was able to stand up for herself, but that's not unfortunate.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yet very real occurrence.
Yeah.
And then at the end, I think it was a very believable growth.
Mm-hmm.
She's not saying she's 100% changed, but she is like, she stands up for herself to those two really mean girls who refused to look at her when she gave the thank you note. I wrote down, I was like, why are these girls so mean? They were so mean. Like, unnecessarily mean.
Yeah.
Like, they could have, if you don't like someone, you don't have to, you don't have to, like, be mean to them. You can just be civil, and they weren't even that.
Yeah.
And then she gets that new friend who gives her the chicken nuggets.
Oh, I love
Give you a man who
Gabe.
gives you chicken nuggets with all the sauces. He's also kind of weird, but they complement.
Yeah, he was a good character. He was the cousin of one of the
mean girls.
But he was just like quirky, and they were just friends at the end, and he was a good character for sure.
Yeah, we liked him. We liked Gabe.
Yeah, but overall, I just thought like really good themes about like moving forward, and even if you get to in the future you haven't moved forward, like there's always time to move forward and be past things.
Yeah, and also in a sense of moving forward, they do these time capsules in the film. So they did one in 6th grade, and then in this movie she opens the 6th grade one, and the end of this film she's making a video for her time capsule for I guess the end of high school.
Yeah,
it's pretty cool, and you can she's changed but for the better.
Mm-hmm.
But and she's not like she's wearing I don't know. It was believable in a very like relatable way.
Yeah, this is definitely one of my favorite A24 movies for sure.
Highly recommend.
Yeah, I definitely would recommend this one. Anything else?
Not that I specifically can think of right now.
All right.
So transition to our next film.
Which is sort of a similar theme.
I was gonna say,
themes.
I watched these back to back and they're very similar.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
So our next film is Lady Bird.
Lady Bird.
Which, if you don't know, is one of my favorite films of all time.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen it about 4 times.
Have you?
I really have. It's on. Okay, so it's on Amazon Prime, and when I get really bored, I'll just watch it, and it like always makes me smile, and I'm always like, yay.
Mm-hmm.
So this was directed by Greta Gerwig. Who's wonderful. She plug in it for Greta's new film, Little Woman, coming out December 25th. But so this stars Saoirse Ronan as our title character, Lady Bird. Also Beanie Feldstein, who's really great in Booksmart. She's in this as Lady Bird's best friend. And this film follows the last year of high school of our main character, Christine, aka Lady Bird, and she goes to this like Christian like high school, like private high school, and it's about her she kind of decides she wants to change.
Yeah, and it's about her like thinking she wants to go away to places with more culture, like Connecticut, where people where authors like live in the woods
and write.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, so this takes place in Sacramento, which is where Greta Gerwig grew up as well, and our main character really does not like Sacramento. Mm-hmm. She has this need to escape. It's also about her kind of relationships, not only to herself, but to her mother and her friends, and her several boyfriends in the film.
Yeah. No, I really like the dynamic between her and her mother, who's played by Laurie Metcalf, who's really good in this.
She has some great burns.
Yeah, and she's
like she insults her own daughter, but I was laughing with it.
It's like a very complicated and real relationship because the mother's character, she's very mean at times, but
she comes from a place of love.
She comes from a place of love, and it's sort of about giving affection and like how you give affection in weird ways.
It's not always what is shown.
Yeah.
And like in the film, she works like, night shifts as a nurse in a psychiatric ward. The father is not employed, so they're very low on money. They live in like a not great area of Sacramento, so they're not well off, yet they go to the private school, but she has a scholarship. So there's some things there. I just thought also similar to what is shown in 8th grade as well, the makeup and everything is done fairly well. Although in 8th grade they used, I think, a bit more like age-accurate characters, the characters here don't look like they're 25.
Yeah.
Even though I think Saoirse Ronan, she was like 22 or something when she made this, which is like slightly out of high school, but she doesn't look it. And they kept her acne, which is like something I don't think I had actually ever seen in a, at least like personally, I had not seen in a like high school film where a character actually like has not only believable acne, but has it for the entire film.
Mm-hmm.
Like nothing really changes about it. Like she doesn't all of a sudden become really beautiful.
Yeah.
And gets a guy. She gets the guy the way she is, which is, I thoroughly enjoyed.
Yeah.
I love Julie. Julie's her best friend.
Oh, yeah, no, she's such a good
character. She's the character I personally relate more to.
Really?
Than Lady Bird, yeah. Because Julie, she's very shy. There's this one point in the film where they try out for the musical, which is Merrily We Go Along, which is not an appropriate high school.
Wait, what's that about? Merrily We Go Along.
It's like, they're doing a Richard Linklater film, which Beanie Feldstein is starring in. And basically, I read the Wikipedia once I saw this. It follows a group of 3 friends throughout several decades of their lives, and it has to do with like alcoholism and, you know, on and on. I don't really remember, but it's definitely not like age appropriate. Like, yeah, like, this is like, you know, wholesome. This is not wholesome things. Like, it basically shows the degradation of a relationship.
Oh, okay.
So it starts out in the play as they're much older, and then it keeps going backwards until they've met. So you see them at their worst, which is basically where the play starts, or musical starts, and then you see them when they first met, when they're like young and
that's so
naive.
That's so interesting. I don't think I've ever seen like a play that's non-linear like that. But that's
I haven't seen it either.
No,
Wikipedia.
I haven't seen it.
Yes, they tried for this musical, and Beanie Feldstein, who has a gorgeous voice, she was on Broadway, gets the lead, and she says, oh, this is probably the only ever time, and they talk about how Danny, who's Lady Bird's crush, played by Lucas Hedges, is going to be the opposite lead, and Beanie goes, oh, this is probably the only time I'll ever get to do this, and I'm like, I felt that.
Oh.
Like, she feels like she's not a confident person, but she's so nice and so cheerful, and I was very kind of, I wouldn't say I was like her in high school, but I was definitely way more cheerful and not as like nasty as Lady Bird is.
Yeah, she's like...
She has flaws, which makes her character much more interesting. If this was another film and it wasn't the main character, I'm like, why would I watch someone go through high school? Because in the end, like, the things in high school isn't so interesting, you know? Like, it's not, like, she has superpowers, or she, you know, isn't, or, like, something, you know, huge happens in, like, normal high school films. It's just her life, but she herself and the way she, like, interacts with people is so... fun to watch.
Yeah, no, there are some scenes, and also a character who I think is so funny is the priest. And the priest is
the priest is also kind of sad.
Yeah, there's one scene, and like I had forgotten about it, but it was so funny.
What?
When they're all in a circle and they're trying to get ready for the play, and they're saying
the crying scene. You thought that was funny? I thought that was so sad.
It was just, I wasn't expecting it. So they're all in a circle, and the priest is like, oh, we're gonna play this game. First one to cry wins. And then, like, it pans to Lady Bird and Julie, and then we hear this sad really crying, and it's the priest who's crying.
And that was sad. And then the one thing I credit Greta Gerwig, because she wrote this as well, is each character feels fleshed out. Even if you're not the main character, you wanted to know more. So in the priest's sake, for instance, you find out later that he doesn't do the spring play. He instead goes to the mental ward where he talks to Lady Bird's mom, and he's like, he has this history of depression. He has no one to talk to. And you're like, oh, that's really sad. Like, what else is this to his story? In addition, you have Danny, who is Lady Bird's first boyfriend. She really likes him. He's gay, unfortunately. But he has this Republican family, and he is gay, and he kind of says, like, oh, I'm just, like, it's really hard for me, and you want to know more about him. And I really, like, enjoy that, because sometimes, like, characters can be one-dimensional, and, like, not a single character here is one-dimensional.
Yeah.
Which is so, I feel like, hard to do, and it was so good.
Yeah.
We have to talk about Kyle.
Kyle so edgy.
AKA Lady Bird's second boyfriend, played by lovely Timothy Chalamet. Timothy.
Oh my God.
So we actually saw this movie together. And I usually tend to read reviews before I go to movies. I also follow, like, film festivals, and this was one I didn't really know that much going into it. I had saw Saoirse Ronan in Brooklyn, which is in one of our other podcasts. We talked about it in our romance podcast, but I was like, oh, Saoirse Ronan's good. I saw the trailer. I'm like, oh, it's a high school film. So I saw it with Claire. We walked out of this being like, this is so good. And then we also walked out of it being like, we all know a Kyle.
There are so many Kyles in the world. So many.
So
this was like the first thing I've seen Timothée Chalamet in.
Well, besides Homeland, where I didn't know it was him because I watched Homeland for a period of time.
Wait, was he the son in Homeland?
Yes. Who dies? Yes.
Are you? My god! I did not know that. Wow. Okay, so I guess Homeland was the first thing I've seen Timothée Chalamet in.
This is the first thing where I think I knew it was him because this is the same year Call Me by Your Name came out, right? Yeah, 2017.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they came out around the same time, so he was kind of going off of both films. He was great. Kyle is kind of a dick.
Yeah, he completely is.
But also, like you see his dying father. Also, that great line in the film where she's like, Lady Bird, like, doesn't really know how to talk to Kyle, and
she's trying to be edgy,
she's trying to be edgy like him because he doesn't not need to try. He is edgy. She needs to try, and she's like, oh, I'm gonna kill your family if you tell on me, and he's like, oh, well, God's already doing that for me. And I was like,
his dad has cancer.
Which you see part, and they did, I did read somewhere where they did film a funeral scene. It just didn't make it into the film. Because Timothée Chalamet, he's saying, like, I think it was like an interview, he's like, oh, I get recognized a lot for Lady Bird. Everyone's like, oh, it's the douche from Lady Bird. And he's like, but we filmed a funeral scene. I have more to my characters. That's like another way where there's more to him. Yeah, I feel like I described him as like Tumblr black and white. Like he's a Tumblr boy. He's an
e-boy.
Pre
e-boy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Just because like he doesn't dress like an e-boy. Yeah, no. But any other things? I really love this film.
Yeah, I love this. When it came out, I was sort of Greta Gerwig was nominated for Best Director.
Yes.
And at first, I was a little hesitant because it was like a stacked year for movie. This was
who won for Best Director?
It was Guillermo del Toro, and the people nominated.
It was water. Cannot forget.
It was Guillermo del Toro, Christopher Nolan, Jordan Peele, Greta Gerwig, and Paul Thomas Anderson.
And it was a stacked year.
And Steven Spielberg was not nominated. I don't think he should have been, but I'm just saying,
that's
like,
for the Post.
Yeah, like this year, I was like, oh, should have Greta Gerwig been nominated? But now looking back, I'm like, absolutely.
It was well directed.
If anyone else tried to make this movie, they just couldn't.
They couldn't.
Yeah, not without like her love for Sacramento and just like
there was certain points where like there were just like scenes of Sacramento, just shots, and it was really like beautifulally done.
Just very personal.
Also, the way it was very nostalgic, so it takes place in like 2002, I think. And I read about like this kind of sepia tones that the film has, very like kind of reminiscent. Like makes you when you watch the movie like reminiscent for like a different time, which I like definitely felt even though I'm not that old.
I'm trying to think what else. It's very rewatchable.
Yeah, as I've said, I've watched this film so many times.
Yeah.
Also, can I just mention the iconic line of Julie going, the titular role? It's really iconic. Should become a meme. I think it is a meme. Not very well known.
Yeah. Saoirse Ronan just has so many, like, delivers lines so well. Like, there's the one iconic line where she puts Lady Bird in quotations, and the priest is like, why is it in quote? And she's like, I gave it to myself. It's given to me by me.
I also like the line where after she's had sex for the first time, and with Timothée Chalamet, and she's like, I just wanted it to be special. And he's like, we're going to have so much unspecial sex. You know, like, people are dying. You know how many people we've killed in Iraq? And she's like, shut up. She's like, shut up. Like, two things can be sad at the same time. And I'm like, that was also, like, a really great lesson. Like, even though it was kind of in a funny way. Obviously, in the end of the film, they kind of reconnect. And she does. So in the whole film, she's kind of aiming to go to, like, New York, Yale, even though I've been to Yale and it's not that great. And obviously she doesn't have the grades because that's what her guidance counselor says, which is truly iconic.
Yeah, there's this one great line when she's at the guidance counselor and she's talking, the guidance counselor is telling her to like join the theater, and she's like, I would like to be in Math Olympiad, and she's like, math isn't your strong suit, and then she goes, not that we know of yet.
Math is still not her strong suit. So she like goes to school in New York and she kind of over there starts to realize how much she truly loved Sacramento because she's now like obviously without it.
Yeah. It's just you don't know what you love until it's lost.
Exactly, and I think
appreciate what you have to learn to appreciate what you have in the moment.
And she also appreciates her mom, like what her mom has done, which I think is also a great moment where she calls her mom on the phone. She talks about driving around Sacramento, and then our fourth film is Good Time.
Good
right?
Time.
Yes, so Good Time. Also another wild film, I have to admit.
Really wild, yeah.
Yeah, A24 likes their wild films. So this is directed by Josh and Benny Safdie, who I think this is their first. They've been directing for about, I think like at this point maybe like 10 years or so, but this is their first, I think, movie that most people have heard about.
Oh, wait, they're doing Uncut Gems, too.
Yeah, did you not know that?
No, I didn't know that.
They have a new film coming out with Adam Sandler soon called Uncut Gems.
Oh, gotcha.
Which also got, like, really, like, intense reviews. Good reviews for Adam Sandler. The Weeknd's in it. Idina Menzel is in it. So that's their film coming out now, but what we are talking about, Good Time, which I think is their first collaboration with A24, is starring the wonderful Robert Pattinson.
Robert Pattinson.
Can't get away from him.
Yeah, A24's darling besides Timothée Chalamet and Lucas Hedges.
Yes, he's the A24. He has some other films on A24, might we add.
Yeah, he does.
He has a lot. He is truly great. In this film, I think he's much better here than he was in Lighthouse.
Really?
Yeah. So I have been putting off watching this film for a very long time. This is from 2017. It probably came out to Amazon Prime around that summer, so the summer of like 2018. So it's been almost over a year. And every time I would sit down to watch it, because I would watch the trailer and I had really like researched this for some reason. I was obsessed with the film, even though I had never seen it. And I was like read so many reviews, read so many articles with the directors and with Robert Pattinson. And then every time I'd sit down, I'd be like, I don't want to watch someone ruin their life. Like I was never in the mood. And then this podcast forced me to watch it, and it was such a fun ride. I did not realize how much I would enjoy watching someone ruin their life. And for the sole purpose is that you don't care for the main character.
Yeah.
You don't at all. He is not sympathetic at all.
No, because he screws over so many people
and he doesn't care.
No, like, starting with his brother who's disabled, and basically...
That's the director. That's Benny Safdie.
Get
the
out.
Brother. Can't believe you don't know this! So there's... The main character is based on Robert Pattinson. He's basically he's in every shot of this entire film. But he basically has this disabled, I think, younger brother. So he's deaf. He definitely has some learning disability, mental disability. And that is played, if you don't know, by Benny Safdie, who's one of the directors.
I'm shook. I did not
know
that.
so much about this film. It's ridiculous.
That is so funny. Oh my gosh.
Okay, so... Yeah, and the whole film is that the brother Nick is played by Benny Safdie. Robert Pattinson plays Connie. So Connie and Nick rob a bank.
After Robert Pattinson makes him rob
a bank. And the brother gets caught. Connie doesn't get caught. And so Connie now has to come up with the bail money to get his brother out of Rikers. And that's basically what the movie is about. It's basically one night of trying to get this like $10,000 to get this his brother, and everything that goes wrong in a way where it was quite hilarious. I guess we can. I don't know. What are some of your favorite scenes?
Okay, so definitely when they're robbing the bank, like so intense, and then
the music here is pretty on point. I loved it. It definitely helped with like the feeling of like. You want to know what happens next. Yeah. It's very chaotic. Okay,
the one scene that I remember so vividly is when the bank robbery is on TV, and basically what happens is
so much happens.
Nick takes Connie's the brother, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so Nick...
Connie is the... Robert Pattinson. Nick is the brother.
So Connie takes Nick from the hospital. Turns out that he takes the wrong person.
I genuinely laughed out loud at that moment.
Which, that was insane. But anyway, before he knows that, he goes to this house and is trying to convince the family, like, oh, you have to let me in. Like, it's me and my brother. We have nowhere to go. And him and one of, like, the girl there are watching the TV, and the bank robbery comes on. So Robert Pattinson starts making out with her.
She's 16, might we add.
I know.
So it's definitely, like, there's this weird undertone of, like, what's going on.
And then, she gets arrested.
So
after trying to help him.
I do admit, so in this film, a lot, I don't, like, we can say the plot, I'll say, like, a shortened version of the plot. He tries to get mail money from his rich girlfriend. The credit card doesn't work, so instead, he realizes that his brother is in the hospital. So he's like, okay, I'm gonna break my brother out of the hospital. Which he does, which the entire time when he's trying to break his brother out, I was like, this is not gonna happen. And then it does happen. And then he convinces this person he met on the ride back to, like, people's houses because he was in a wheelchair, and he convinces them to stay at their house. And after this point, he realized the wrong guy, who was not his brother, tells to him that there's this LSD, this Sprite can of LSD that he had left at this amusement park. So Connie's like, oh, we'll sell that and I'll make bail money. So when they get to the amusement park, they go with the 16-year-old girl. She stays in the car, and they both make their way. And there's a African-American security guard. Him and the girl are the only two people to get, at that moment, to get arrested, which is very, like, telling. They're the only, like, people of color to get arrested while everyone believes, like, Connie, who's this, like, white man. Mm-hmm. That was, like, a little social commentary on that part. And then after they end up, so what they do is that they actually change clothes with the security guard. So Connie looks like he's a security guard, and this is the guy who was breaking in, and then they go to his house, and then eventually Connie gets arrested. Mm-hmm.
And good riddance, too.
He did, like...
Such an unlikable character.
Yeah. So the other scene where I, like, genuinely laughed out loud, so the character who we think is Nick this whole time, actually isn't Nick. I don't know what his name is, but he's played by... he's been in their other films, so Benny and Josh Safdie's films. And he actually is, like, low-key the inspiration for Good Time, because he went to Rikers, and that was, like, their main inspiration was, like, okay, what is it like to be in Rikers, like, this prison system? But so he is talking about how he got into this, how he basically got to the hospital, and it's this weird, like, segue, where, like, it's all the shots. Like, you think, like, okay, he's gonna tell the story. Like, no. Like, they take this weird cut into, like, we're no longer talking about Connie and Nick, we are now in this guy's world. And he talks about how he got this, like, his face is all fucked up. And he basically is, like, he got out of jail, he got really fucked up on drugs and alcohol. And then he face plants onto the like, pavement from a moving car. And he's like, now look at my face. And I was generally laughing out loud. Like, what do you think would happen if you face plant onto the concrete?
Well, we have two, jumping out of A24 and jumping out of cars. Happens in Good Times and Lady Bird.
Yeah, jumping out of cars. What is with them?
I don't know.
One of my favorite scenes of this entire film actually happens in the beginning. So in the beginning of the film, and they advertise this film as, like, a good time, you know, a good ride. Like, it's a thriller. That's kind of how they were doing it. And the first scene is Nick is kind of in this, I think what I believe to be a therapy session. He clearly isn't diagnosed from what you can tell. And they're having this kind of therapy session where the therapist is basically saying, like, okay, do you understand these words? Giving him groups of words, stuff like that, some sort of test. And Nick starts to cry. And then all of a sudden, Robert Pattinson just comes in, and they do this really fun zoom onto his face. And I just love that zoom so much. Like, I genuinely was like, that was great. Because as soon as you zoom into Connie, you're like, this is the film. Yeah. Like it was very calm before. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden, it has that lovely zoom onto Connie, and you're like, okay, this film is starting.
Yeah, and after that, there really isn't a calm moment.
There is not a calm moment. Super chaotic, but in a good way. It makes you want to watch and see what else is going. I really like the directing was so good. I love when they're doing the car scenes. There's a bunch of scenes where they're just, like, filming the outside of the car, like, where they're driving, and it was very reminiscent of, like, police car chases. Yeah. Even though there is no police car chase in the entire film.
Mm-hmm. It feels like the whole thing feels like a police car chase.
Yeah, and
it's sort of like
the way they're driving and the way that it's filmed, you're like, it feels as if it's a police car chase, and I think that's because it's this feeling of, oh, they're going to get caught at some point.
You always just feel like, oh, someone's on their trail, and they're, like, going to get in trouble any moment. He's going to get in trouble any moment for this. Yeah. And I was sort of waiting for his whole world to fall apart.
I was waiting for it, too.
Because I did not like his character at all.
Yeah, like, he's so dumb. He's so also the, like, introduction for his character was kind of like a con man, which you can clearly see throughout Connie, the con man. but he manipulates every person around him, and he's good at it.
Mm-hmm.
That was the thing. That's where, like, there are certain parts where I'm like, you're a terrible person, but it is so fun watching you manipulate people, because he'll just turn on a smile, or he'll say something, and all of a sudden people are just falling at his feet.
He can be charming when he wants to.
Yeah, which is really, it was such an interesting part to see for Robert Pattinson, I think.
Mm-hmm. But looking back on this, like, I don't remember this A24 movie, or I don't care for it as much as I do the others, just because it's not a story anyone can relate to, and it's not a character I'm rooting for, like you said.
But that's what I think what's fun about it. Like I said, like, it took me over a year to actually sit down and watch this film, and I just thought it was fun. Like, I was laughing out loud. I was yelling about how dumb Connie is, like, the entire time.
I enjoyed watching it while I was watching it, but I feel like, at least for me, there was really no takeaway from it.
Yeah, there definitely isn't, like, a lesson. This isn't, like, Lady Bird or 8th Grade or, trying not to ruin some of the other films we watched. The Lighthouse, there's no takeaway or character to relate to.
Okay.
So you can't give it that.
But I feel like there's more it's more symbolic. And you can analyze it more, you know?
I think you could definitely analyze this film. The way they use color is pretty cool.
Oh yeah, no, the way they use color is really good. There's, like,
really,
a lot of
really
neons,
good.
and it's, like, really dark tones.
Yeah, it's, like, kind of, yeah.
Because most of it takes place at night. Apart from, like, the bank robbery scene in the beginning.
Yeah, and also the end scene as well.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I have noticed, maybe I'll talk about it with our next movie, because I'll do it then. Is there anything else? Also, I feel like in this film as well, you want to know more about the characters in the same way you do Lady Bird, but it's presented in a much different way here. Mm-hmm. There's several scenes where they know who robbed the bank, the police are talking to the grandmother. At the beginning of the film, it's implied the grandmother abused Nick, yet you don't know if Connie ever lived with Nick. And there's this kind of history where, like, you think Connie had gone to jail, but you don't know why. And there's this whole thing with the grandmother, and it made me, at least for them to, want to know more. Like, there were points in the film where I was like, what is Connie's motivation? Because they talk about how Nick is like, he's like, you said we'd live in a farm in Virginia. And I'm like, wait, where did this come from? Like, that's clearly why they were robbing the bank, because they said they're going to the bus station afterwards. And it's this whole thing where I'm like, I want to know more about these two characters, because they're interesting. It's like, how did they get to this place to be so fucked up? I
just can't see him ever living on a farm in Virginia.
That's what I'm saying. That's why it's so ridiculous, where it's like, you imagine these characters and you're like, and it's like they have this hope and dream to be somewhere that they can't. Like, you can never picture them. You can't picture Nick or Connie, like, living this slow life. And it's also like, I was wondering, I'm like, how did they get this far?
Yeah, that is so funny, because it's such a fast-paced movie, and they're trying to achieve this slow lifestyle. Yeah,
it's like very, you know,
that's the story I want. Give me Robert Pattinson on a farm, and it's just slow-paced 2-hour movie, what he's doing, conning the other farmers around him.
Benny Josh Safdie make this film.
Once again, the acting's good. A24 always just, like, bringing it with the acting, honestly.
They did. There was also one point in the film, I don't know, his accent, Robert Pattinson's accent was really good.
Yeah.
There was this point in the film where he said, it's like they're at the grandmother's house with the 16-year-old girl, and she says where she lives, and he says, like, oh, thank you so much. And I started laughing because it's this very, like, New York accent that I know.
Yeah.
And I was, like, such pullback to, like, other guys saying this. And, like, you can clearly tell he's trying to mean it, but I know that accent. I'm like, I can't.
Yeah, just faking it so hard.
So hard.
I always forget that Robert Pattinson isn't American, because he does play Americans in so many of his films. He does a really good job. But he's got, in real life, this, like, pretty thick British accent.
He does, yeah.
Does a good job of hiding it.
Good job, Robert Pattinson. If you can't tell, we like you a lot.
We love Robert Pattinson, if it's not clear already.
Okay, so I think that's a good ending point for Good Time.
Good Times.
Our final A24 film is Moonlight.
Moonlight was
so good. It's a film we wanted to put in our romance podcast because it's very general, very good. But we think it embodies a lot of, like, what A24. It's their first film to ever win Best Picture. So we think they did a really good job. Moonlight is a great film. I rewatched it for this. I had seen this once it had already won a Best Picture, because I think it went back into theaters
Yeah.
And I watched it, and I was like, oh yes, like once I saw it, I was like, it deserved what the like awards it got. If you don't know what Moonlight is about, or if you lived under a rock, so Moonlight is directed by Barry Jenkins, who went to Florida State University, might I add. I'm from Florida as well, and it's based off a play by I don't know who the guy who wrote the play is, but it's inspired by that. And it's told in 3 parts. We follow a character named Chiron, through when he's little.
It's broken up into little, Chiron, and then Black.
So when he's little, he's like in elementary school. When he's Chiron, he's like in high school. And the 3rd part is when I'd probably think in his 20s or something. Maybe like late 20s. And it follows him throughout his kind of, childhood in Florida, and then once it goes to the 3rd part, he's in Atlanta, but also goes back to Florida.
Barry Jenkins just did knock this out of the park. It's
very
amazing.
well done, and it deserved what it got as well.
Yeah.
So you start off not with Chiron, but with Juan, who is played by Mahershala Ali in what I did not know is the definition of a supporting character. So Juan is only in the first part of this film, and I think each part is maybe like 30 minutes or so, maybe a little longer, depending on the part it is. So Juan, he plays this drug dealer in what we assume is Miami, and he's very the first time we meet him, he's like checking up with one of the guys who deals, and he says like the one line where he's like, oh, how's your mom feeling? And you can tell that he generally cares, and he's generally like a good person, but this is the circumstance into which he had grown up in.
Yeah.
And then once you kind of start with that, it's a very kind of more calm feeling. You see these kids chase this little boy, and the kid being chased is Chiron. But everyone calls him little because he's small.
Just
He's small.
I feel like physical appearance plays such an important role in this because
there's a lot.
He starts off like very like a scrawny kid.
In high school, he's very like lanky,
and then at the end, he's like very big. And I know Barry Jenkins talked about this in a few interviews about how it is very much about masculinity.
I was gonna say there's a very
he's the same person at the end, even though he's gone from like scrawny, but he's been able to like hide it inside his very masculine body, even though he's doesn't fit the toxic masculinity stereotype.
Like Juan is also he's a very kind of gentle man, but you would think he would be this very masculine, angry, stereotypical like African American man, which we see in a lot of TV. He is like a drug dealer, which is what usually the stereotypical man is, but
has the same
it turns it on his head. He's still a human being, and that's what I really liked. So the film really kind of has undertones of masculinity, homosexuality as well. So the main character Chiron is gay, or at least it's implied that he's gay, and also it talks about like his relationship with his mother, his relationship with kind of like his blood, and then his found family, who is played by Janelle Monáe, who's Juan's wife, who I love. She's so great in this. And I just it's so nice to see him kind of change. So throughout the film, he gets bullied. For the first 2 parts, he's bullied both in elementary school and high school for basically being skinnier. Yeah. He's called a gay slur word a lot. And then in the last one, as we said, he's very he's built. Yeah. Very built. And he has, earrings, he has a grill, he deals drugs now, yet he is still the same. And he has this very much outward appearance of he's a hard guy. And then as soon as the end of the film, you see him start to go back to his normal self. He's very soft-spoken. He's so shy. Yeah. Which is something I didn't necessarily expect. Because you kind of see it, you expect it when you're younger. Yeah. I didn't really expect it when he was older, because he has this outward appearance. Yeah. There's just so many great scenes in this. It's I love how everything, besides in the last part, is played to classical music. Yeah. Mm-hmm. The fights are played to classical music. There's a scene where Juan is teaching Chiron. They have a very close bond. Oh, the swimming lesson? The swimming lesson, and it's set to this beautiful score, and it's very biblical. It's if he's being reborn. And Juan and his wife, Teresa, they kind of teach Chiron, how to kind of I don't know, they teach him, like, it's okay to be himself.
Mm-hmm.
And it's okay to express yourself. Whereas if he goes home, his mother, who's a drug addict, and she spirals more as the movie goes on, is kind of, like, belittling him.
And totally screaming at him. Like, there's
Screaming
this
at
one
him.
scene, it's so scary. And, well, the lighting in this is so beautiful. But there's this one scene where she's in a hallway, and she's screaming, but it's at him. But the whole scene is silent. So you just see her, and the lights are kind of flickering. And it's, like, a beautiful scene, but it's just, like...
And then you don't realize what she says until the end of the second part.
Mm-hmm.
Where she yells at him when she's just like, don't look at me.
Yeah.
And she's also, I don't know who plays her, but the mother does a really great job as well.
Mm-hmm.
The acting in here was really great.
But you could definitely see how Sharon could become so attached to Juan.
Because they're very much a loving home.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
There's a point where she talks about, in the second part, where Teresa's like, hey, remember, like, we're all love and all pride here.
Yeah.
And that, you can tell, like, he very much clings on to that.
Mm-hmm.
So, obviously, we said he is gay in this film. He does have a love interest.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least his own love. So, we meet him, he's a constant in all three parts. We meet him when he's in the first part as, like, a kid who kind of is like, oh, Sharon, you should stand up for yourself. And they have this wrestling match, which very, like, well done. There's insane, like, close-ups of different body parts, and you can't tell that they're necessarily wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the second part is when they, like, kiss for the first time, and it's beautiful.
Right after that, though, there's that horrible scene where Kevin's punching Sharon because his classmates were telling him to.
Yeah,
and he obviously, like, didn't want to.
Yeah, there's this fear of, obviously, like, Sharon, like, they just, like, assumed he was gay, and he was getting bullied a lot. And then Kevin, who after, like, this is Sharon's, I think, first sexual experience with Kevin, this bully is like, hey, if I tell you to beat this person up, will you? And Kevin's like, yeah, of course I am, because he has to have this appearance of, I'm a strong man.
Mm-hmm.
And the bully's like, okay, beat up Sharon, beat up, Little. And he does. And Kevin keeps telling Sharon, like, hey, if you, like, stay down, I won't hit you again. And you kind of see this, like, snap in him where he's like, no, like, I'm standing up for myself.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you shouldn't be, beating me up.
Yeah. The one scene I really love is it's in the second part where Sharon's walking through the hallway, and it's a really long, drawn-out shot into the school.
Wait, is that, like, the last scene?
No. This was in the second part where he hits...
Yeah, the last... Kind of like the last scene of the second part.
Okay.
Yeah, I commented on that too.
Yeah, so it's like just very slow shot. It's very him walking determined. Through the hallway, and they show his face a lot, and you're sort of just like, what does he think, and what is he gonna do?
You can tell he's angry and he's determined. And you're like, what is he gonna do? And he literally takes a chair, and to the bully who said to, like, beat him up, who's been antagonizing him throughout this entire part, beats the crap out of him.
It happened so fast. Like, after that slow scene, he gets into that classroom and just whips out that chair so fast.
And everyone's like, what's going on?
Like a card castle just collapsing. That's sort of what it felt like.
Yeah. And then in the third part, so as soon as this part ends, he gets arrested and Kevin sees this, and then it automatically goes to the third part where, like, there's these loud, rap music. You see him as very confident. He's so talkative in this. He's, making jokes, and you realize now he's in Georgia and he's dealing drugs. And then literally, as soon as he gets this phone call from Kevin, he reverts back to who he really is. And he, like, doesn't really know how to talk to Kevin. Mm-hmm. And Kevin basically reaches out to him and is like, oh, like, you're a hard person to reach. I'm in Miami again or whatever. If you ever come by, like, I work at this restaurant. Like, we should hang out. And our lovely Sharon, who knows what he wants, drives all the way down and goes to see Kevin. And I love the scene as well when he first realizes, like, oh, like, that's Sharon. Like, I did, like, because Kevin kind of looks fairly similar. He's, skinny, not exactly, like, built. Sharon looks incredibly different.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And Kevin's like, oh, wait, like, this is you.
Yeah. All the acting in this just so well done. Yeah. Like, Barry Jenkins, like, all three of the actors who play Sharon, they all sort of look a little, like, kind of different from each other in each part. But Barry Jenkins commented, and he was like, it doesn't really matter what they look like, but he had this quote: "The eyes are the windows to the soul."
That's what I think I loved about
And even though they might not look exactly the same through each part, if their eyes look the same, the audience will connect to that, which I really felt.
I think that's why I felt that too. I think also that's why he does this thing. He does it several times in the film where he'll have someone talking, but the shot is just someone's face without their mouth moving. So you're very focused on the emotion, not necessarily what you're hearing.
Yeah.
Because the mouth is moving. You're like obviously this person is saying something, and it happens with the mother. It happens with Kevin. I think when Kevin first is talking to Chiron, and it's like it's kind of like when you see someone and you're just focused on what their face looks like and not necessarily what they're saying. And I really liked how he plays with that a lot. And then I love the last couple scenes in this when they're having this conversation where they're in Kevin's apartment. And at this point in the film, it is made realize that Chiron has that Kevin, he has a daughter, but he's living a very good life. He's not with the mother.
He's fulfilled.
Not daughter. He has a son. Oh my god.
Yeah,
Kevin
but he's
Jr.
fulfilled with fatherhood.
Yeah, he has this great, and Chiron is not necessarily this person, and Kevin is kind of like, what do you want? Like you're not this person. And he's like, how do you know I'm not? And they have this conversation where it's basically saying I like you, and they're not saying that. And then Chiron up and out goes, you're the only person.
Yeah.
That has ever you're the only person who's ever touched me. And that was so beautiful. And Kevin's face when he realizes what he said, he has this kind of awe and and then they just look at each other and they're like, yeah, this is what we want. Wait, let me pause it. Oh, okay. We're back. Okay, we were talking about last scene.
And Kevin and the look on his face.
Yeah, he's so... I just love them. You can tell that they love each other, which I think is really great. And I agree with what Barry Jenkins said about the eyes. It's very much the window to the soul.
Eyes were just, very important in this movie.
Agree.
I'm trying to think what else.
This was the thing where I wanted to mention. So the last scene of this film before it fades to black is... The second to last is where adults Kevin and Chiron are in the same position that young Kevin and Chiron were in when they were having their first sexual experience. And there's definitely a theme within all of these, maybe almost all these films, about this circular. In 8th grade, the first shot is very similar to the second shot.
Yeah.
In Good Time, it starts with Nick and the therapist, and it ends with Nick and the therapist in this room. In Lady Bird, not as much, but it is that circular pattern of that. And I think...
Well, talking about the car ride.
You're talking about the car ride, which is what we see in the beginning of the film. The Lighthouse, not as much. But...
I mean, they're still on the island at the end. So,
that's true. Circular pattern, man.
That whole movie is circular.
Truly. But I think that's all I have to say about our top 5 films. What about you?
Yeah, I think... I mean, I had history on... I forgot about this, but... History on the actual story of the Lighthouse.
Yeah.
Do you want me to go into that a little bit? I forgot to say it. We could do it later.
Okay, so thank you so much for listening with us this episode. If you'd like to know more, we do have a website. It's Making Sense of Movies. It's a Wix website, so please check it out if you'd like to subscribe or anything like that.
And if you email us, we will email you back.
We will email you back.
That is the Casper guarantee. We'll email you back.
Okay, have a good day. Thanks.